Hi guys, I'm Maylin Dovan, certified athletic therapist and founder of Rehab-U Movement and Performance Therapy. And I want to talk about ankle rehab for a faster recovery. I always say that there's a big gap between what we do in the clinic acutely, or what gets done in the clinic acutely, and what people need to get back from injured to strong, from injured to performance. Now with ankle rehab, when people have had an ankle sprain, a lot of the times what we'll see done in the clinic is strengthening of the muscles that cross the ankle so that they can play the role of the ligaments. That's a very basic way of what we actually learn. So we want the muscles to be able to take the role of a ligament that is now damaged, that now has more laxity, which makes sense, but there's a little more to it than that if we hope for muscles to really play the role of ligaments. So what we do in rehab in the clinic initially, and what you'll see most people doing when they've had ankle rehab, or if you ask them what they've done, they will have been given open kinetic chain ankle exercises with a band. So they'll have a band attached to their foot and they'll be doing dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, inversion, eversion with a band sitting down, okay? So in the initial stages of rehab, that's important. And I explain this with the shoulder as well, with the infamous rotator cuff exercises. The idea is that if you injure a joint, if there's a joint injury, like an ankle sprain, all of the muscles that cross that joint will become inhibited. We call that arthrogenic inhibition. So the idea of initially restoring range of motion and then doing those little TheraBand exercises is to reactivate those muscles that are inhibited. So it has its use. But obviously, we stand on our feet and we move around and we change directions. So those exercises will never be sufficient stimulus to actually strengthen those muscles for what we need them to do, and certainly not appropriate stimulus for them to take the job of a ligament. So it's not enough to say, I need to strengthen the muscles around a joint for them to do the job of a ligament. I need to do more than that. So if we want our muscles to react at a fast enough level to take the place of ligaments, then we need to do things a little bit differently. So when people come to see me for ankle rehab, I often find also that they don't have good foot awareness. So a lot of the times, and if you've had a pretty severe ankle sprain, for example, if you've had a second or even third degree ankle sprain, but you've spent some time limping around, you may have spent a little bit of time immobilized depending on the grade of your sprain. So you've lost that contact with your foot. Okay, your toes haven't moved, your foot hasn't moved, your foot hasn't been in contact with the ground, it hasn't felt how the ground moves under it and react, and that's what we need to work on. So in the initial stages, we definitely need to reactivate that foot, okay, and do things to improve that cutaneous sensation underneath the foot. So rolling around with a spiky ball and doing exercises, closed chain kinetic exercises barefoot is an important part of that. So one thing that I like to use is a spiky ball. So a ball like this with spikes, just because of how it stimulates the bottom of the foot. And really what we would get André Felix to do is just roll it around under the foot. And what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to stimulate those cutaneous receptors of the foot, okay? Plantar foot sensitivity. That's what we're trying to stimulate. So he could roll that around, he could roll a little bit more quickly, get a little bit more stimulus in there. So those are the kind of things we would do to work on waking up the foot, on improving that sensation of the foot on the ground. So the foot needs to feel how the ground is changing under it, or how your body weight is changing on your foot, right? That's what will make muscles react to stabilize the ankle. Okay, and that goes all the way up the chain. Now, instead of the TheraBand exercises, when we get into later stages of rehab, we need to get people back on their feet and get them doing closed chain kinetic exercises. So exercises where they're standing on their foot. And the two most important muscles that we want to work on are the Peroneus Longus on the lateral aspect of the ankle, so the major lateral stabilizer of the ankle, and the Tibialis Posterior, which is the major medial stabilizer of the ankle. Okay? And if we work on these muscles, and we work on the foot intrinsics, and we work on that plantar sensitivity of the foot, we can actually get those muscles to activate at a reflex level, and then they will do the job of the ligaments. Okay? So two activation exercises for those two muscles. First one is going to be for tibialis posterior. I'm going to get you to turn your back to the camera, actually. And we'll simply have him do a calf raise. So he's going to raise up on his toes, but his idea is to squeeze the ball with the heels, okay? So as he squeezes the ball with the heels, he gets that inversion at the subtalar joint, okay? So he's coming up on the toes, so he's getting plantar flexion and inversion, working on tibialis posterior, okay? So there's a way to activate that muscle. We're still working on activation, but we've taken it from open chain band exercises to now standing on his feet, okay? Then for the Peroneus Longus also does plantar flexion, but does plantar flexion and eversion. Same thing, I'm gonna get you back to the camera. Yeah. So the point of the dollar, the little loonie that I gave him, is as he comes up onto his toes, I want him to think about pushing that big toe into the dollar. So come on up and push, push, push. And yes, what we want that to stimulate is some eversion of the subtalar joint. So I want him to go up and onto his big toe, push up into his big toe. Good. And this one takes a little bit more practice. As you can see, he's still a bit inverted there. Less so than when he's squeezing the ball, obviously. So trying to get that plantar flexion and eversion for the Peroneus Longus. Okay, so those are the two exercises that need to get integrated in the later stages of rehab instead of sticking to TheraBand, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, inversion, eversion exercises, okay? Then when we talk about getting that stability, so doing those stabilization exercises, we often have balance board exercises in the clinic, for example, which are not bad. It's just that balance board exercises tend to be very slow inversion and eversion moments, so they'll only train the ankle to react to slow inversion, eversion moments, which isn't always true to sport, obviously. So I find that the air discs are a little bit better because they generate much more instability, much more quick perturbations than the balance board. So if I had the option of the two, the air disc for me would be a go-to more than the balance board, okay? But one exercise I really like to use if someone is training in the gym, like my friend André Felix, who trains in CrossFit. He's not working on unstable surfaces. He's on a stable surface, but his feet are moving around quickly. He's going from a narrow stance to a wider stance, catching the barbell, etc. So the floor is going to stay flat, but how he distributes his weight on the floor is going to change. So the cushion will be less specific than doing, for example, object tracking. So the idea with object tracking is he's going to stand on the one foot. Now I have him keep his other foot close to the ground to help him because I don't want him to start hopping around on his foot. Now he's crossing the object over and he's always following it with his eyes. Because he has to follow that object with his eyes, it's going to change his input quite a bit. And he's going to tend to lose his balance, and you're going to see that that foot really works to redistribute his body weight appropriately. Okay, so he's getting that adaptation of the foot, that foot stabilizing, reacting to the change of where his center of gravity is, which is changing as he passes the ball over his head. Okay, so for me, that's a little bit more specific to what he has to do if he's rehabbing from an ankle injury and he's going to be doing box jump, he's going to be doing lunges, he's going to be catching barbells, his feet are going to be moving quickly and we need them to react quickly. It might be different if you're working with a football player who's going to run on natural grass and uneven, okay? So those kind of things are things to consider. It's also about equipment, so there's things we can do in the clinic because we have balance boards, we have air discs, we have this and that. But people, when you give them their homework and they're doing their stuff on their own, they don't have access to all of that equipment, and we need to innovate a little bit and give them exercises that they can do on their own, okay? So there you have it. Stimulate the cutaneous receptors of the foot. Work on activating the primary medial and lateral stabilizers of the ankle using closed chain kinetic exercises, closed kinetic chain exercises, sorry, and then adjust your proprioception exercises based on equipment, based on needs.